Welcome back to another Boxscore Geeks show. We've got with us today a special guest, Vivek Netrakanti. And because of Vivek Ranadiv, I keep wanting to say Ranadiv whenever I say your name. I honestly think you'd be better in charge of the Sacramento King. So, for those of you that don't know, Vivek's actually the reason the podcast started back up. We had been doing it, I had gotten lazy. Vivek said, "Hey, let's do it again, 10 minutes at a pop." I agreed, blew out of control really quickly. You talked a lot of nets, and then of course you went off to college, but luckily in that time Brian came along, was willing to help produce. But you basically were the person who brought back the podcast. It's so great to have you back on again.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks to Brian, the podcast is a lot more official. And
Yeah.
before we would just talk for like an hour and a half about literally anything. And now, it's a little more like segmented.
Oh yeah. And so that's the other person on our podcast, Brian, aka the voice of God. So just say hey in case we have you hop in at all on the show, Brian.
I'm always ready to hop in, Dre, so just let me know.
And then, of course, I'm Dre Alvarez, aka Nerd Numbers. And so today, unsurprisingly, this has just been in the news. Enjoy this, NBA fans. The NBA free agency, we complain about LeBron being wishy washy. We complain about moves not going down. Rest assured, after a few dominoes fall, the dog days of summers get so boring for basketball fans. So enjoy this time. But we're going to talk NBA free agency, and I know we actually talked some Jason Kidd with Arturo last podcast, but of course, as the Nets fan, we had to talk with you, and luckily for us, it got even more crazy in the last week. But we're going to start with free agency, so I'm going to let you start us off there. There's been a ton going on, but you've had some good insights.
Well, I guess the biggest thing here, which is, so different from 2010, which was like the last big free agency in a way, is that like we don't know a whole lot, like the consensus seems to be that LeBron, Wade and Bosh will continue going, playing for the Heat. But like every day you kind of get like kind of like an ominous report from, someone in LeBron's camp that he's talking to, all these kinds of teams. And, Wade isn't the same player. Bosh isn't even the same player. So like I think that's like the most interesting domino to fall. Like it's a question of where does LeBron go, I think, first before anything major can happen. And like,
If LeBron doesn't go back to Miami, Dwayne Wade made the biggest contractual mistake of his career.
yeah, which is what makes you think that they'll stay together, because Wade has his agent behind him. They all, they met at a hotel, et cetera, et cetera. But like now you're getting reports that Wade and Bosh are unsure of what LeBron wants to do. And to be fair, if LeBron doesn't care about being labeled a mercenary or playing in a smaller market, there are better options for him than Miami. And in my opinion, Atlanta is a better option for him with if Horford stays healthy. I think
Atlanta, is that actually, I mean, that is actually a good location, but I just couldn't buy LeBron going there. Although I
that's
think
what
he
I'm
said he
saying.
wants to stay in the East.
Well, so if he stays in the East, right? Atlanta's a good team with him and with Horford healthy. That's a pretty good team. And then there's Phoenix would of course not that they're in the East, but they would be very, very, very good if LeBron chose to go there. And those are the main teams where you look at like should LeBron not care about a couple things?
What about, you
Those
didn't mention Houston. Houston's been my front. Houston, he'd be amazing. And they
So here's
cleared
my
off
thing about
Oshik.
Houston. I think that, and someone, I don't remember who, but someone on ESPN wrote an article about this. I think James Harden is not very reliable in the playoffs. And the reason why is because a large part of his game is getting to the free throw line, which isn't as effective in the playoffs. And that's why he gets shut down, more easily against like a team
But
like Portland.
when not Houston, when the Oklahoma City Thunder made it to the finals,
Yeah.
he was the driving force behind them getting there. And he didn't have a
But
great finals, but that's small sample
but
size.
that team also had Kevin Durant, like
So what?
the
So what,
Rockets don't
man?
have anyone like that.
If the Rockets have Dwight Howard and LeBron James, then there you
I'm just
go.
saying yeah, okay, if they have LeBron and Dwight Howard, that's true. But, you know, okay, I guess that would be a very good team. I'm just saying that from, uh, a youth standpoint as well. Like the thing is, I just think that Howard and Harden are a lot easier to guard in the playoffs than Eric Bledsoe, Goran Dragic, and a bunch of three-point shooters. And I know Phoenix didn't make the
James
playoffs, which
Harden is a three-point shooter, though. I'm disagreeing on this. I'm
maybe. I
disagreeing
mean,
immediately.
well, I don't know. Like I said, James Harden had a terrible playoffs, and Dwight Howard hasn't been the same for a long time. And James Harden isn't like the greatest 3-point shooter. He only shoots like 36% from the field. That's not that good.
Oh yeah. Well, the last two in Houston actually, surprisingly, his 3-point shot shooting has gone down. It was better in OKC,
And the reason
which is
why is because
interesting.
Harden is actually, I think, the perfect example of like, kind of like an anomaly to the rule that, how people say that, the more your usage goes up, the more inefficient you get. And I don't think that's true. We've proved that that's not true. But I think Harden actually could, follow that rule in the sense that when he's more featured in an offense and when good defenses are playing against a team like Houston, Harden is a lot easier to defend against because a large part of his game is just getting fouled. So, if
Yeah,
you
and
watch,
he well, the one thing that's interesting there is getting foul calls in the playoffs kind of requires you having name recognition.
yeah,
And that's one of the things like Arturo's looked at and other people is that younger teams don't do as well, and that's because they don't get that recognition in the playoffs. So if Harden's starting to get recognized more as a marquee player, he's been amazing in Houston. His last 2 years in Houston, he's been a star shooting guard. He's been amazing in the playoffs when he's been on a recognized star team. You put LeBron James on that team, I actually think the respect for James Harden goes up.
well, you're right. I mean, if LeBron's on the team, they'll be fine. If LeBron's on any team, that team should be. LeBron could have taken the Bucks to the conference finals, but like,
In the East, let's
right.
stress.
So,
Yeah.
clearly they'd be good. I'm just saying from, the best place for him to go. I don't know if that's Houston.
All right. Well, that's still my opinion. I still think Harden's not getting enough. He's still amazing, and I'll stress. Give a shout out to Justin Halpern. Hadn't even thought of this head on the Short Corner podcast where he said he thinks on-ball defense is overrated and team defense matters. Houston doesn't have a bad defense. I think the statements about James Harden's defense being so bad, or even the same to Eric Bledsoe, or no, Eric Bledsoe is supposed to be a good defender. Who am I thinking of? The one who just signed in on the Kings.
I don't know who.
Wow, how are we missing this? He came off the Clippers.
Oh, Darren Collison.
Darren Collison.
Okay.
Darren Collison's defense has been mocked.
Yeah,
I think
so
those are overstated.
I think Harden is a bad defender. I just think everybody else on Houston is good. So they make up for
I'm
it.
saying, I agree, but I'm saying it's kind of like Shaq's free throws, where I think people can point to that being a bad part of his game, but I'm saying I don't think it offsets the stuff he does well enough to even take him out of star contention.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Harden is a star, but like, we're talking about LeBron in free agency. He can team up with literally anybody with cap space, right?
And,
I mean,
I'm telling him he should go to Houston. That's I think him with Dwight Howard, James Harden, if they can get a play. I mean, the issue is they had to let Chandler Parsons go to free up cap space, but if they can get Parsons back, that would be huge. I mean,
no,
I
they
think
can. They can get Parsons back. The only thing that could throw a wrench in that is if a team offers him a contract and he agrees to the offer sheet because he's a restricted free agent.
I thought he was unrestricted. They didn't make him the offer, I believe.
No, well, so
They just cut him loose, I thought.
oh, they didn't make. I thought they would have made the qualifying offer because his cap hold is only like $3 million.
Yeah. But I think even then they're trying to just get it
I
off the books. So
maybe. I think
it's
the
up to
plan-
him if he wants to
yeah.
come back.
I think the plan is to have Parsons if they get a big free agent too, but we'll
Yeah.
see if that happens. But yeah,
Oh,
and then
Kevin-
yeah.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
Yeah, the next thing I just wanted to say, with LeBron, you kind of have no clue what he's gonna do because I mean we can't really get into his head, but so if he's the first domino to fall, I think it's safe to say Carmelo's the next domino to fall.
And yeah, this is what's interesting is, and we mentioned this on the last podcast. If Carmelo goes to Houston, I'm going to mock you, Houston. I'm sorry. Melo, I think he showed in Houston he can be a good player that contributes to a winning team. The problem is his sticker price is so huge. At, over 20 million a year, that's eating up a third of your cap space. That's so restrictive that,
right.
if you sign Melo, you just kind of have to accept that's it. And if you're signing Melo, you have to I guess in theory, Houston could say, if we get Melo, that's the last piece we need in a championship team, and we do nothing else.
Right.
And from that perspective, maybe I'm still not a fan of it, especially for long-term growth.
So I think Melo, to be honest, is a good player. I think after last year, and
no, I agree he's good. He's just expensive.
Yeah. And in the right system, I think he could be even better than what he was last year. I think if Melo had a very good ball distributor, like like the way he did on Team USA. That's why when we got the
Or when he
rumors,
had Jason Kidd a few years back.
right? So when we got the rumors that he was going to play with LeBron, I was like, that's a great idea. Melo will be incredible with LeBron as a teammate, and that's why I think maybe even Houston could be an okay option for him in the sense that they play a very, very fluid offense. And, Melo, if he has the space and he has the players around him, can be even better than what he was, in New York last season. And like, if he goes to Houston, he may be expensive, but they may win, the entire thing.
It is definitely so. I'm pulling Melo up, and what I'm also going to do is as I mentioned to Arturo, because we have a bet going on about this. He's listed as a small forward this year, and he got a wins per 48 of .161. That's 61% better than an average small forward. I mean, he's good, and I could see him getting better. I'm scared. I would not bet on him hitting star level. I agree with you and Arturo. It's not outside the realm of possibility. It's just that's one of the things I think people leave out in free agency is the realization that every dollar you spend is a dollar you can't spend on another free agent. The way the NBA works, it's going to be a cap hold that's going to hit against you. A friend of mine made the wise point that, just given Melo's age, if Melo signs a long-term deal, we know for a fact he is not going to be as good of a player at the end of his contract as he is going into it. We just know
So
that.
interestingly enough, we heard the reports that the Lakers are the top,
Oh, I
competition, right?
love this.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the reason why is because Houston, Dallas, and those other teams don't want to give him that contract. They don't want to give him the max contract for 5 years. And the Knicks, we know, do. And the Lakers, I wouldn't be surprised if they offered that huge deal too. And the Rockets were more like, look, we're going to offer you less money. And they may have given an excuse like, look, we're going to get other players, et cetera, et cetera. But Mark Cuban even said no max contracts this offseason. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the reason
Oh,
why the
that's
Lakers.
BS. He would give LeBron James a max contract
Okay,
in a
yeah,
heartbeat.
other than LeBron, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah.
I think that was also Cuban's kind of admittance that LeBron isn't going to Dallas, but which I don't think he would. But like, I wouldn't be surprised if that's why Los Angeles is suddenly the biggest competition when they have they have no team really. They have
Yeah,
Kobe
I think
and
the
nobody
only player
else.
they have on contract next year is Robert Sacre or Sacre, however you say
Well,
it.
and Kobe and Nash too.
No, next year. All right, is Kobe on the thing too?
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry, my voice seems to be going, but yeah,
that's
Kobe
okay.
and Sacre, that's it.
Yeah, they have no team. So that's it's weird to think that the Lakers are like the biggest, draw for Melo, but again, they are the Lakers. They have the market. I'm sure their presentation was super impressive, but like, you know, to say that that's a good move for either party is a bit of a stretch.
Well, okay, so by the way, you mentioned a bit earlier LeBron James's kind of motivation. And what I'll say is there's a great documentary on LeBron James. I'm forgetting its name. I apologize. I'll try and include it in the show notes. That is actually about him when he's in middle school and high school and
Maybe
how
called Shooting Stars, I think.
no, it's not it. I'll try and think of it. But basically, it talks about him trying to win a title, and he had two options in high school. He could basically have gone to, I think it was St. Mary's, which is a private school, and try and win a title, or he could have gone to the public school. And everybody thought he was going to go to the public school. He didn't go to the public school. He went to the private school. The other thing about the private school, though, was he brought his friends with him. So he basically brought his friends together. They formed a team that went on and won a title together. And so he was actually loyal to his friends. He just wasn't loyal to who everybody thought he should be loyal to, which was the community. And I mean, in the NBA did the same thing, right? He ditched Cleveland, which was his community, but he stayed loyal to his friends. He played with LeBron, or he played with Dwayne Wade. He brought along he tried to get Ilgauskas a ring, right? He brought Ilgauskas along.
Right.
So
Juwan
I mean,
Howard.
you what? Did
Juwan
he bring
Howard.
along? Yeah. So
Yep.
I mean, he's shown that before. And so in this offseason, I buy LeBron James wants a ring, but I also buy he wants to be loyal to his friends. So we might see him and Wade end up somewhere together.
I mean, I
Um,
think it's a stretch that Wade leaves Miami.
yeah, I agree. But then the other thing, though, is if we look at Melo's career, and I have nothing against this, Melo's entire career, he has been very money oriented. That's fine. He exited college a year early because and this follows wages of wins conventional wisdom because he knew his value was never going to be higher. He just won a title. He knew that his draft stock was the highest it was going to be. He signed in Denver, top 5 pick. He re-signed, but the way the CBA works, that's the best deal. He got the max contract, but instead of doing 5 years, he did 3 to give himself an option, and he hop shipped to a big market for a max contract. I have no problem with him going to Los Angeles. That might be a wise move for him. Big market, max contract. That's Melo's MO.
Right. Well, the Knicks do offer more though, from a money standpoint, because the usually the extra year doesn't matter, but for Melo it does because after that contract with the Lakers, like he may not be able to get another max contract. So having the extra year of max money is actually
And
important.
it's 4% more, and it is,
Right.
and New York still is the biggest market.
And the
And
thing about New York is the pressure is so low. If the Knicks win 1 or 2 playoff series, if the Knicks get to the conference finals or the finals, Melo is immortalized in Knicks history. Like that's a huge accomplishment. But like for the Lakers, you have to win. Otherwise that you didn't live up to your contract, and
that's
that's
true.
right.
Yeah.
So from a pressure standpoint, the Knicks probably have smarter management. Phil Jackson made a great trade, in my opinion.
Oh, you're kidding me. Oh, we're gonna have to argue about this.
I mean, Jose Calderon is a very good point guard. They got
He
some picks.
is.
They got picks out of it, right? Dallenberg's a pretty good center.
All
Like
right.
Chandler's a
I'm gonna,
good player, but they got 2 good players and some draft picks out of that deal, and they got rid of Raymond Felton.
they didn't get rid of Raymond Felton, but I mean, they're New York. They can just burn the
So
money.
here's the thing: they upgraded at point guard by a lot,
Wow,
and they
Dallenberg actually played quite well last year. You're
and
right.
they didn't downgrade by center that much, really. I mean, they didn't downgrade a whole lot, not enough to hurt the entire team.
Let me check
Plus,
just one thing on Dallenberg to verify that, but keep going.
Plus, I think their cap situation gets a little better because they offloaded Chandler, and so I think that Jackson got good value.
Well, what I'll say about all right, so what I'll say about is interesting. Cap wise, they hurt themselves long term because Thiago Splitter has a multi-year deal.
Thiago
Tyson
Splitter.
Chandler was done this year. Oh, what?
Wait, what do you mean by Thiago
Thiago
Splitter?
Splitter's on. Oh, did I say Thiago Splitter? Sorry.
Yeah.
So Tyson Chandler has a
Okay.
long-term deal.
Yeah.
Jose Calderon has a long-term deal. Tyson Chandler's deal is only 1 year. But to your point on Dallenberg, he played just as many minutes as Tyson Chandler did last year, and he played about as well per minute. And actually, someone pointed this out to me, and I hate to say they were right. If you take a look at Tyson Chandler's last couple games, like the end of the season, he wasn't like while his wins per 48 is like above 2-0 for the season. The last couple games he just was not there, if that makes any sense.
Right.
So yeah, this doesn't actually seem as bad. I think I agree with you, actually, including Dallenberg. I'll just be honest, I hadn't been paying as much attention. I think I think Dallenberg's not bad. And as you mentioned, they did get 2 picks. So there you go.
Yeah. So I thought it was a great deal, and the Knicks may have decent management, and I think Melo's completely convinced of this. So I think he's gonna go to the Knicks, and so that leads to all a big team like the Lakers probably strikes out, the Rockets probably strike out. So then it leaves all these other free agents like Stevenson, Lance Stevenson, or
Yeah. So when you were talking the Lakers, if the Lakers sign Melo, it's just they're done, right? All
right.
their caps go into Melo and Kobe. They're done. I wrote an article a while back called "How to Rebuild the Lakers in One Season," and a player I listed that was intriguing, and you just brought up, was Lance Stevenson. I believe Indiana, and this is hilarious to me, offered him I think $8 million a
9
year
million
over
a
4.
season.
Was it 9 million a season
Yeah.
over I think 4 years?
5. So it's 5 years,
Over
44 million.
Okay,
Is what they offered.
that's not terrible. But what was it? If you look at this team, Dave Barry and I actually got in a big argument about this, about how bad a GM Larry Bird has been. And if you look at all of their moves, they've been terrible. Luis Scola was terrible. David West, I think he's on steroids because he way overperformed, but even David West was terrible. They basically spent all their money, and now they've got this young, promising up-and-coming player, and they're trying to shortchange him after they've just been throwing money around for the last 4 seasons.
Well, I think Stevenson's definitely gone because the Pacers don't want to, get over the luxury tax limit, and they're only $5 million away from doing that. And if Stevenson rejected the $9 million deal, he clearly wants more, which they don't want to give to him. So I think what the Pacers are hoping is that Stevenson finds a very, devoid market and then just has to come back. But I I doubt that. Stevenson, for all of his, highly publicized antics, is a really good two-way player. So like it's difficult to say that a team like, Houston or like the Lakers won't go for somebody like that, or even Phoenix.
Well, and what we're starting to notice, well, some teams depress me on their inability to embrace advanced stats. We are noticing that certain teams, Kyle Lowry, at 12 million a season, that's higher than he probably would have gone for in previous seasons. But Toronto did absolutely right there. Kyle Lowry is now, on par with the Ty Lawson and Steph Curry of the really good guards that's paid a reasonable salary. Teams are starting to realize players are good and that they need to pay him. So I think Lance gets paid.
And I think he leaves Indiana. So that's going to be, kind of the end of Indiana's runs to the conference finals.
Bet the under on Indiana. And also, did you see Stavo Cephalosha also left the
Thunder,
left OKC, and he was another player on my list that I said would be good for rebuilding in 1 year.
Yeah, well, although I don't think he's on a team that's supposed to be very good. I don't remember who signed him, but
yeah, I mean that doesn't matter. But what I'm saying is that matters a lot for Oklahoma. Oh, he signed with the Hawks actually. Heck, that's incentive for LeBron to go to the Hawks. There you go. Okay. So actually, based on that, I'm going to say bet the under on OKC, bet the under on Indiana, and bet the over on Atlanta next season. All right. Is there any? I was going to say this is actually a shortened show this week. Happy to have you on again, but gonna have to cut you off shorter than normal. So we're actually going to talk Jason Kidd. So no clever segue to that. But basically, as the Nets guy, we would be remiss to not bring up Jason Kidd. There have been a few good articles since Arturo and I talked to him last season. But as a Nets fan, how are you feeling about losing Jason Kidd? How are you feeling about the state of the team?
Well, so not good about Kidd in the sense that he got very innovative towards the end of the year, I thought. Like the style the Nets played was something that, not a lot of teams in the NBA do. And, there were guys and, he was getting extremely good value out of the veterans minimum guys. And, like Paul Pierce was playing pretty well for his age, et cetera, et cetera. And now they've hired Lionel Hollins, who I don't think is as innovative and, who won't be able to produce, that very non-traditional long ball, which is what Bill Simmons called it, or somebody called it that. I think it was Bill Simmons or Zach Lowe. And like, obviously they lose that. They did get okay compensation in terms of the 2 second-round draft picks. That's pretty good for a coach. But then,
Oh, sorry about that. My father-in-law just walked in, but continue.
Yeah, that's okay. But, in terms of the state of the team, you never really know because a large percentage of the team is free agents. Pierce, Garnett could retire. Livingston already left, which is bad. Blatch is definitely gone, which is not a bad thing. So it's just a question. D-Will may get traded. It's just a question of what is this team? I don't know who the starting lineup is going to be on opening night.
And then you've got a coach that's had weird, I think I agree. I actually agree with Memphis. I mean, I think Memphis, his leaving Memphis, I think he gets a lot of credit for being a good coach there. When I think reality, he just coincided with injuries.
Yeah, I think
he left Memphis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Lionel Hollins may have been good for developing their like team identity and chemistry, but I don't know if he made any of those players significantly better. I mean, people credit him for Marc Gasol and Mike Conley, but those were just young players getting better. Like a lot of people like to claim that coaches are really good for young players developing, but young players just develop because that's what they do. They get better.
I think there is something to that, but I think part of what's to that is just coaches giving young players a chance. And I think a lot of what that just comes along with is your draft spot. I think when you talk about young players getting developed under coaches, I think it's just kind of attention. And I think we notice that, right? If you are a top 10 draft pick, you're going to get attention from the coach. You're going to get minutes. You're going to get a chance to become a good player. And we have players that may have been great, but well, sorry, dogs are definitely excited. So we get players that, may have gotten a chance to develop, but they just don't get any time on the court and they don't get any attention from the coaches. But again, I think your point is right. I don't think that's the coach doing anything spectacular. I think it's just the difference between, it's kind of like, you're in college right now, the difference between like, what if you weren't allowed to go to college versus what if you're allowed to go to college? And then at the end we go, well, Vivek just didn't pan out. And we go, well, yeah, you didn't get a college education. How surprising.
So I mean, I would say Hollins. I'm not too excited about. Kidd I thought was a very good coach, and the Bucks. They're not a good team, but I think Kidd will help them out. And it was sad to see him go, of course. So because this is a guy I thought the Nets really turned it around in the second half of the season, and I thought that with that Kidd would stay and become like one of the better coaches in the league after like a couple of years. But now that may still happen, but not on our team. So we'll
Yeah,
see what
well, he'll
happens.
be
But
he'll be out with me in Wisconsin, so that'll be interesting.
yeah,
And
true.
I actually we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about a Zach Lowe piece. This will be the thing we end on.
Yeah.
And basically, Zach Lowe kind of talks about just how kind of a cluster that that Brooklyn is right now, just with how crazy the Russians been with money, how many outstanding contracts there are, how weird
There's no
situations
game
are.
plan, really. There's no future game plan for the Nets. Like, where do they go from here? Like in 2 years, Darren Williams is making $20 million a season. You know,
Ah, jeez.
so there's really no game plan for this team. Like, I don't know where they go from here.
And then also, one of the interesting things to me, though, was he talked about how Machiavellian Jason Kidd was being and how power play. And while I kind of agree, and it is kind of weird, I'll put both sides. I do think the attitude and power trips that coaches in the NBA get on is kind of nuts. On the other hand, I kind of realize that if you're not proactive as a coach, you're pretty much just waiting to be fired and kicked out of the league. And one of the interesting people that Zach Lowe compared Jason Kidd to was Pat Riley. And Pat Riley is kind of revered as this really smart coach, really smart team builder. But the reality is, if you look at his start, there's a great book by Jeff Pearlman called The Showtime Lakers. Basically, Pat Riley lucked into the Lakers. And I'm pretty sure I had this up in front of me, but I think it was Jack McKinney. But basically, he lucked into the Lakers when one of the coaches injured himself on a bike, and then basically Magic Johnson got in a fight with Paul Westhead. And so Pat Riley inherits the Lakers, which is one of the greatest collections of talent ever. And he starts off very humble, but as the team gets success, it just goes to his head, and he becomes kind of a crazy dictator where at one point he blames some of the players' wives for coming to a game. Basically, he says the team won't pay for them to come to the game. They come off their own pocket, and then they lose the game. And he basically says, because your wives were in the stadiums, you players, I forget which two, were distracted, and it's your wife's fault. That's how nutbags Pat Riley goes. And so it's interesting to me to kind of put the thing and call Jason Kidd as being on a power trip when some of the most respected coaches and people have done that in the past.
So I'll say this.
And it's
about
not because
Kidd.
they were good, it's because they lucked into good teams.
Right. So I'll say this about Kidd. So one of his major gripes was that Billy King is a poor decision maker, and that there's no future plan, and that there should be somebody above him, right? And that's not necessarily a wrong thing to say. Billy King makes and who knows if this is executive orders by the Russian ownership, etc. But Billy King makes very short-sighted moves, regardless of whether you say it's good to go for it all every single year and not really value your future. Billy King doesn't have a future plan. You know what I mean? He's not a very good GM. So, but for Kidd to say I should be the GM or I should be above Billy King in ownership is at the same time, he should at least be able to see why that ultimatum is not exactly enticing. For a guy with literally zero experience, even if Pat Riley did it in the 80s or the 70s.
Well, Pat Riley, again, that's the annoying thing about front office positions and coaching in the NBA is you kind of just have to live long enough to kind of jump.
Right.
And so that's the point, right? Pat Riley had a decade with the Lakers before he hopped ship. Well, I forget who first. Was it the Knicks?
The Knicks,
with the Knicks. And then, by the way, for all of the complaining LeBron James got, Pat Riley welched out of his contract with the Knicks to sign with the Heat and actually got fined by the league. No one ever brings that up, but LeBron James, what a terrible person waiting for his contract to be able to leave. But, you kind of have to, what you're saying, right, get the experience. So I think Jason Kidd could be wrong. We've seen lots of former greats be terrible.
Kidd wanted to trade Lopez and Mirza Teletovic for Larry Sanders and Ersan Ilyasova.
That's a great trade.
No, but it's not Brook Lopez's market value. You know what I mean? Like, you can get better than that.
I still think that is getting. If you think Larry Sanders comes back to his full strength, that is a fantastic trade in terms of improving.
Plus, Larry
the team.
Sanders has the drug issues, etc. Ersan Ilyasova is not good at all. You know, Mirza Teletovic is better
I
than
thought you
Ersan.
liked Ilyasova like 2 years back on a podcast. I may have to
Right,
go
but
look
then
through them.
then the next 2 years happened, and then he
I guess
stopped being
that's
very
fair.
good, right? And like even Sanders has the drug issues, and I honestly don't think Brooke Lopez and Mirza Teletovic are both decent NBA players. Brooke Lopez is a good offensive center. Mirza Teletovic can hit threes. You know, like I don't, and they're both kind of proven in some aspects. Like I don't think trading for these like lightning rod dudes that used to be good and now have these issues is the best thing.
Yeah, geez, Ilyasova was terrible. Yeah, Ilyasova and Sanders are both terrible. I can
Yeah.
give you a point about not getting
Especially
Marvin.
when you're talking about Brooke Lopez's market value has got to be higher than that. Even if he's overrated, he was an all-star a year ago.
What about the injury though? That's the one.
Right, but even the injury, you can kind of say, let's play him next year and trade him at the deadline. You know,
Yeah, I guess that's
like
true.
why make a trade like that? You know, like that's what makes me think like Kid is a little in over his head on saying I should be. It's okay to suggest that they should get a new GM. It's not okay to then say I should be the new GM or I'm leaving, which is
Well, to be
essentially what he
fair,
did.
I'll give it to him though, because again, as I've been saying about like Dwayne Wade, the reason I'm mad at Dwayne Wade for opting out of that 20 million a year, as a player and even as a coach, your lifespan is very limited unless you're lucky. So if you can get as much power, I mean, that's the problem is I agree Jason Kidd is arrogant. I agree he's probably being crazy. But what I'm saying is that does not distinguish him from other coaches and other GMs. And if it succeeds and he gets a GM job quickly, then just more power to him. What I'm saying is if we want to say that's unacceptable behavior, fine. If we want to say that's unacceptable behavior for someone in NBA front office, no, because it's such common behavior.
That's fair. I mean, it's
That's all I'll give it.
probably better for Jason Kidd, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's probably better for him. It just he deserves the ire of Nets fans and other NBA fans at the same time.
Fair, I'll give you that.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, we're at time, and the one way we just end the show is with shout outs. So I told you at the beginning of the show, if you can't think of any, we can, I'll go to mine, and I actually have to pull up my Twitter handle to get the person I want to give the shout out to. But do you have anybody you'd like to give a shout out to today?
Not particular. Other than I don't know if he watches, but Zach Lowe for just putting out a post every single day. That's like that has to be like 1,000 words or more. So definitely Zach Lowe does a lot of work, and I love reading his stuff.
Yeah, we've talked about this before. I think on a podcast with Kevin Draper, I had a discussion about this where I basically said some of it, is limiting yourself. I think there are some Grantland pieces that are very good, but they just, they could do with some editing. They could do with, pruning. I'm a fan of that. And maybe that's just my style. So Brian actually put the Twitter link in the script, but my Twitter shout out, or just shout out in general for the week, goes to Bill, as he's listed, which is bflip33 on Twitter. This was an amazing tweet, got a lot of love. I retweeted, got a lot of love even after I did this. And he says, and the Lakers lose their 14th straight game, 123-97. Kobe and Melo combined for 72 points on 68 shots. Oh my God, that was amazing. The second shout out I'm going to give, this is going to be kind of a tease. Don't worry, I'll add this in post. So on the audio version of the podcast, you'll hear this, and there will be a piece this week about it. We had a multi-person, I think it may be up to a 5-person tie on the NBA Playoff Challenge. Apologies for not getting that up sooner, but both Devin and myself have been traveling, so that fell on the back burner. Apologies, everybody. And, of course, the NBA draft and everything happened. But that'll be up soon. You'll see who proved their prognosticating abilities in the NBA playoffs. None of the box score geeks placed, but a lot of you did really, really well. So those are my shout outs for the week. Thanks so much again, Vivek, for being on. Are there any websites? You are on Twitter. You're not that active, but are there any other places you'd like people to look at your stuff, or flying under the radar for now?
Boxscore Geeks is like the place to go.
Yeah. Okay. So keep coming back to the site. Hopefully it's summer vacation, so hopefully you get a few more times to be on before you go back to the grind of school.
Yeah, that's right.